If you grill it, he will come.
Hey.
Hey.
Is this heaven?
Nope. It's Fareway.
Hassel, Andrew Downs. It's time for Instant Iowa. Immediate analysis and reaction presented by Fareway Meat Grocery. From the Channel Seed Studios, this is Iowa Everywhere.
And that is exactly the bounce back Hawkeye fans had in mind. Welcome to Instant Iowa, presented by Fareway here in the Channel Seed Studios. Chris Hassel with Andrew Downs as Iowa blows out Washington 40-16. Kirk Ferentz earns his 200th Big Ten victory. That's second only now to Woody Hayes. AD, I'm not sure many people envision that kind of blowout, but this certainly makes you feel a lot better about this team than where we were a week ago.
Yeah, absolutely. You get away from like the elite teams and you kind of look at what the rest of Iowa's schedule looks like, and it looks like teams that are similar to Washington, some a little worse, some a little better, but there's certainly a middle of the pack in the Big Ten, and Iowa has a chance to be on top of that kind of middle of the pack. Before we get too far, in heaven there is no beer. It's why we drink it here.
Dos Equis.
I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer Dos Equis.
All right. Thought it would be a confluence, but that's all right.
It's tour, and I'm glad it's only 2:30 in the afternoon here in Iowa. Like, this is our first and, potentially only 11 a.m. kick, and therefore early afternoon Instant Iowa show. So I didn't want to go all in with the confluence just yet. I got a long night ahead of me here, Hassel. But, man, how can you not feel good about, like you said, I expected Iowa to win this game, didn't expect an ass-kicking, and that's what we got certainly in the second half.
7 straight scoring drives for that Iowa offense. How about that? Caleb Johnson gets back to his ways as he goes for almost 200 yards combined on the ground and through the area. 21 carries for $166, 2 touchdowns on the ground, 3 catches. He had the most catches of anybody on the team. 22 yards in that 18-yard touchdown. This was a very different game early, though. Washington had a nice plan coming in. They had those back-to-back 14-play drives for 70-plus yards to start this game. And you're thinking, geez, is the Washington offense going to be a problem for Iowa all day? I thought the turning point was that very next drive, Washington's third drive of the game, AD. In fact, I sent a text to the group right before this drive that this defense has to step up. They have to make a play. And it was a 7-7 game, and that's when Aaron Graves comes forward, forces that fumble. Then they get a 3-and-out and a big punt return, and all of a sudden things were going in Iowa's favor. A lot of credit to that D.
Yeah, as you said, Iowa, and this defense isn't the defense that we've seen the last few years. It isn't, but it's still a good defense, a very good defense at times, and we saw that at times today. They're not wrapping up enough. They're giving too much cushion on the back end. They almost got burnt on that flea flicker on Washington's first drive.
Yes.
Probably should have been a
That's
big
actually,
play.
I want to go there, too, because I thought that Iowa caught a couple of breaks early where if they hadn't, this game would have gone in a completely different direction. And it started, AD, I think, with that flea flicker where Lee was beat. He was. A good throw, and that's a touchdown for Washington on their opening drive. Then they get the high snap on the short field goal and then the low kick that gets blocked by Y.A. Black. And then a play that I think a lot of us will forget about, but this would have been huge. Caleb Johnson's fumble on that Iowa drive. Now, we didn't see a lot of looks at it, but it sounds like everything they were saying on the broadcast, had it been called a fumble, they wouldn't have been able to reverse it. And had it been called a fumble on the field, AD, that would have been returned for a touchdown by Washington. So Iowa caught a few breaks, and they took advantage of it.
And again, Iowa's defense under Phil Parker, we've seen it over and over and over again. First of all, they typically get better as the game goes on, unless they're in one of those games where they're on the field the whole time. But they do the bend but don't break thing. And if you're able as an offense to dink and dunk your way down the field and not be penalized and not make mistakes, then you have a chance of gashing this defense, because you can pick up 4 to 6 yards every play, and you may not get the home run, but if you don't turn it over, if you don't get penalized. Now, what we saw ultimately is Washington wasn't able to complete those drives, right? I mean, you got the field goal blocked by Y.A. Black on the first one. They are a mess. I mean, on Two Guys this week here on Iowa Everywhere, you and Chris Williams talked about their kicking game and how
shout
big a
out to
mess
Williams
that
for
is.
calling that. He said that
Man.
would be big, and it was.
They're just in the red zone period. They're often penalized. They really struggle there, and that's where Iowa makes its hay as a defense. So those long drives are killers unless you don't score, and then it's almost the other way, right? And if you're Washington and all of a sudden you've eaten 14, 15 minutes of clock, you've driven the ball all the way down the field twice, and all you have to show for it is a tied game, that's pretty disheartening for an offense.
Since you cracked open that beer, it reminded me to thank the Full Court Press family of restaurants and bars. It is October. It is Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
And places like Hessen House and the Iowa Tap Room, all kinds of great October beer, and German beer, especially at the Hessen House, is especially great in the month of October. Full Court Press family of restaurants celebrating Oktoberfest, and I mean, we're showing 3 of them here. There's too many to even list off. About a dozen restaurants and bars.
We don't even have El Bait Shop or the High Life up
Buzzard
there.
Billy's has breakfast now.
Yeah.
Full
The
Court
Royal
Press
Mile.
owning the restaurant and bar business in the great Des Moines area. More on the defense, AD, and it's clear that they're not at the level of past defenses,
They're
as
not.
you mentioned.
Yeah.
And coming into this game, this is stunning. They were the worst team in the country in red zone defense. They had allowed 8 drives into the red zone. All 8 of those trips resulted in touchdowns for
That's
the opponents.
wild. Because
Last
again,
week,
that's
Ohio
usually
State was
where
5 for 5.
That's usually where they've done so well.
Yeah,
Once that shield,
the bend,
once
but
that
don't
field
break.
shortens, exactly. They stop you.
That's exactly what they did today. Washington, not counting that last drive inside the red zone garbage time, but there were 4 drives the first 2.5, 3 quarters of this game that went inside the Iowa 25-yard line. All of those drives were over 50 yards, and they only netted 10 points in those drives. I mean, you look at those drives in past games, and you're going to give up 28 points the way that defense had been playing.
Right.
But they really got back to what they do best, which is, sure, you're going to allow some long drives. You're going to give up the 10, 15-yard plays. They even gave up like a 30-yard run in this game. But when they needed to, they came up big with either stops on 4th down or forcing turnovers.
Yeah, big turnovers.
And then you start to play complementary football and put that offense in positions to succeed. And Cade didn't have to do much today. Like, he missed a couple throws again. Toward the end of the first half, Vander Zee was open for a touchdown, didn't hit it. But he's 8 for 14. He only threw the ball 14 times, ran it 37. 8 for 14, 108 yards, 2 touchdowns, did not turn the ball over.
Such a typical Iowa game where you blow out a team. And again, Washington isn't a great team, but it's a team that just beat Michigan. I mean, it's a team that has good players and a good coach, and yeah, they're kind of refinding their identity after all the change from last season, but this isn't a bad team, and it's just such an Iowa stat line to have a quarterback who goes 8 of 14 for 100 yards.
Iowa was outgained in this game. They won 40-16, and they were outgained 393 to 328. But that's Iowa football. It's complementary football, and man, big props to Tim Lester. I thought this was his best game calling plays. There was a drive early on in this game where they did a couple things that you never saw from a Brian Ferentz offense. And it's the not just pre-snap motion, but misdirection.
Mm-hmm.
There was an end around to Weegan for a first down.
Play. The play
and
design
then
on that was wonderful.
There was more eye candy a couple plays later where they kind of faked some end around motion, and Cade like whirled around backwards and handed it off to Moulton, and he ended up getting it inside the 10-yard line. The very next play was a Johnson touchdown. I thought, and you can comment on this, I thought it was Lester's best game, and I think this was the best game of the season for Iowa. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100%. Yes, in all phases. We'll get to special teams at some point.
Yeah,
that was great.
Dakin had 2 bombs to start this game.
Yes. Drew Stevens looked good.
Hit them all.
Yeah, and again, the quarterback situation is a problem. Cade McNamara is not a very good quarterback, but he doesn't hurt them. We saw Brendan Sullivan come very close to hurting them. That was one of those plays, that weird kind of lateral pass that he attempted to make on the goal line. That's one of those where you're like, okay, Kirk Ferentz kind of has a point here when he
wanted
picks
to
the guy
talk about
who's not going to make the bad play. Because there was a point
that we're going to see Sullivan anymore.
I do.
I know we saw him at the end of the game to hand the ball off, but did you notice they got inside the 10-yard line and they did not bring Sullivan in? It was McNamara.
That's true. And earlier in the game, they had done what you and I had been calling for, which was bring Sullivan in on a short yard situation in the middle of the field, right?
Love to see
not
that.
Even there, 3rd and 1, and he ran for and even out of shotgun. And he ran for the first down, and that was great to see. And that was like, I was like, okay, because I don't know what the dynamic is between Tim Lester and Kirk Ferentz. I do believe that Kirk Ferentz is the reason Cade McNamara is and will continue to be the starting quarterback. Now, whether or not Tim Lester agrees with that, I don't know. But in my mind, Tim Lester would probably like to see or utilize Brendan Sullivan a little more, and so he's getting these inches, right? He's getting a little bit of ground from Kirk Ferentz by putting in that 1st and goal package, by now putting him in the middle of the field. Now, do we see him again? I don't know. I hope that the fact that play wasn't disastrous does help and kind of mitigates the potential damage there. But again, it was one of those where it's like Cade McNamara doesn't attempt that. And there was a play late in the second quarter, I believe, and McNamara looked like he was going to get sacked. He kind of ducked. The guy goes over him. He goes, and it's like, okay, throw the damn ball, and he doesn't, and he ends up getting sacked. And I even tweeted, I was like, throw the damn ball. But it's live to fight another day, right? And that's, like it or not, that's Iowa's football philosophy under Kirk Ferentz is take the sack, punt the ball, live to fight another day. Don't make a dumb throw. Don't try to make something happen when it's not going to happen. And ultimately, it wins more than it loses, even if it's not that exciting.
I also, AD, liked that we saw some pressure and some big plays from the defensive ends in this game.
Yeah.
That's been a real question mark for Iowa this season and an issue, quite frankly. But you had Llewellyn, he had a fumble recovery, had a big sack on a 3rd down inside the 40-yard line when Iowa eventually turned them over on downs. He combined there with Herkett for that sack. Herkett also had a big hurry earlier in the game on 3rd down.
Aaron Graves
that is
had
positive
big
improvement.
Game.
And yeah, Graves coming in, just blowing things up on the interior. He and Y.A. Black inside were really good. I didn't expect to feel as good as I do about this team. I thought that, sure, a win against Washington would help, but given that they came into this game 3-2 and playoff hopes are all but dashed for the most part, I didn't think that I would feel this good about this Iowa team. But Brock Heward said it at the end of the game, AD. If Iowa plays like this, he said, I'm not sure any of the remaining teams on their schedule can beat them.
I'm not either. And I do want to kind of have that conversation about playoff hopes dashed, because in reality, are they? I understand
they would
that
have
it
to win
feels
out.
like that. I understand that and I'm not saying Iowa is a playoff caliber team or that Iowa is a top, I don't think they're a top 12 team in the country. I think they would get smoked by probably any other team in the playoff. But we've talked ever since this 12-team playoff came into existence that Big Ten and SEC are probably going to get 3-4 at least teams in. And if Iowa does win out, and again, that's a lot. There's a lot yet to happen. But if they play the way they played today, they absolutely have an opportunity to win out. And they're 10-2 and 8-1 in conference. And let's say they hopefully don't get to a Big Ten championship game where they get blown out by Ohio State again. I
can't believe we're talking playoff again already.
Again, I'm not saying it's even likely or that Iowa deserves to be in the playoff, but realistically, I've heard a lot of people say that over the last certainly week after that loss to Ohio State, that it's like, well, all the playoff talk is over now. And again, maybe the playoff talk should be over, and maybe we should pump the brakes on even bringing it up. If you want to have this same conversation 3 weeks from now, I'm okay with it. But I'm genuinely asking, because when I look at this, I don't see it as being over. And again, not because I was so good, but because their resume is going to put them in a position if they win out that they're going to be hard to leave out.
I would say if they won out and they're 10-2 and they don't make the Big Ten championship game, it's less than 50-50 and more like 25% that they would get an at-large. I see the only path I really see. I mean,
who from the Big Ten? You think 2 lost teams?
Well,
you think Penn State with
the
2
path
losses
I see
in
is
the Big Ten
Iowa
is going to get in ahead of Iowa?
Because if Iowa wins out, they might be in the Big Ten championship game, and then if you win that, obviously you're in.
Right.
But I think the Big Ten.
And I think if you get blown out in that game, you probably drop far enough in whatever rankings or standings there are that you're out of it also.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you got Ohio State,
what I'm saying. If
Oregon,
it's Ohio
Penn State.
If it's Ohio State, Oregon in a rematch in the Big Ten championship game, and Iowa's sitting there at 8-1, and everybody else has 2 losses, do they only put 2 teams from the Big Ten into the playoff because Iowa doesn't pass the smell test?
I think in that scenario, Penn State's probably there.
It's a genuine question. But Penn State probably has 2 losses.
Yeah, but I promise you, if Penn State is 10-2 and Iowa is 10-2, even though Penn State has 2 Big Ten losses,
right,
Penn State would get in over Iowa.
I agree. Yeah, for sure.
It's the way they played against Ohio State.
But is there a 4th team from the Big Ten
I'm starting to think it's just 3 from the Big Ten this season, with Michigan and USC struggling. But
they're absolutely down.
I can't believe that.
Maybe Indiana's the team.
Indiana's unbeaten right now, but they haven't played anybody.
I don't bring that up because I think it's like something we should be talking about. It's a legitimate question. As I hear people say it's impossible for Iowa to get to the playoff, I just don't see that.
I think mostly people are saying that because they don't see, or they didn't before this game, see a way where Iowa would win the rest of their games. And I don't think that this is the best team they're going to face the rest of the year. I think Nebraska is definitely better than Washington, and I think Wisconsin might end up being better than Washington as well. But the schedule extremely manageable with the Michigan State game next week. That's a night game in East Lansing on NBC. Home against Northwestern, which they picked up a really nice win at Maryland last night.
Did.
Then it's home against Wisconsin in what could be a really big game before the trip to UCLA on a Friday night. Iowa wins 40-16 against Washington. And by my count, I believe that's the last time they scored 40 in a Big Ten game since they hung 50-plus on Maryland on a Friday night back in the 21 season. We are presented by Fareway Meat and Grocery from the Channel Seed Studios. Want to thank our friends Quentin Crowner and Company over at Freedom Tire. Freedom Tire. Right now, big sale going on over at Freedom Tire through the end of October.
Shocktober?
It's Shocktober, baby.
It's Shocktober.
Buy 2 struts, get 2 shocks free. But also, you can purchase a set of 4 Goodyear tires, get an in-store instant rebate of $100, plus get up to $225 in additional mail-in rebates. Visit Freedom Tire, all over the metro. They're in Des Moines, West Des Moines, Urbandale, also Altoona and Ames. The sale ends on Halloween. It is spooky season. Visit freedomtire.com for more.
And it's on Halloween, not Beggar's Night, for those of us in Central
I forget
Iowa.
you idiots in Des Moines do a.
I love it.
Stupid.
I love it.
So dumb. So Iowa improves to 4-2 overall, 2-1 in conference play, and I'm seeing a lot of comments from fans that say a game like today, sure, it makes us feel good, but it makes the Iowa State loss even harder
no doubt.
to swallow. Things
And
would be so much different had they.
It's going to continue
finished
to
that
happen.
game.
It's again. I hesitate to even say anything because I will admit I don't love the real time comments on like the Iowa Everywhere thing, just because it's a little too reactive to everything I say. I'm trying to ignore that, but I'm not saying this team is 2002. So like I feel like I have to preface everything I say.
Wait, what?
With
Are you
like,
going to
hey,
compare this
whoop,
team to
whoop,
2002?
No,
Did you
but
just
it's
do that?
No, but that Iowa State loss is going to feel like that. It's going to feel like that, especially as Iowa continues to rack up wins, which I do think they're going to do through these next several weeks. Because you're right, Wisconsin looks pretty good in their win against Rutgers today. That tells me Rutgers probably wasn't as good as we thought they were. Northwestern looked pretty good in a win over Maryland. Again, maybe Northwestern's a little bit better. I don't think Maryland is all that good, right? And so
Look what Minnesota has done. They beat USC last week. Almost beat Michigan.
And so I think there's a big middle of the pack in the Big Ten. And I think
It's the
Iowa
big three at the top, AD,
Yes,
and then
yes.
I don't know where you're going at 4. Is
But
it
I think
Iowa?
I think Iowa
is it USC?
is as good on a given day as any
Indiana?
of those other teams. Right?
I wish
And
Iowa
so-
played Indiana. I really
too.
do.
That'd be fun.
Be a great
I
game.
wish they would do, especially now that the championship games don't matter. You remember in 2020 they had the conversation. I don't know that it ever actually happened. Iowa's game got canceled, so maybe other games did happen. But of pairing up the conference outside of just the championship game, it would be fun to get a game like I don't want to play Ohio State or Oregon in the championship game. I probably don't want to play Penn State, but like you said, I'd like to play Indiana at the end of the year. That'd be fun.
Yeah. I
I'd
would
sign
love
up
to
for
see
that.
it.
I want to
It's too
see
bad.
where they stack up.
I'd love to see them play Indiana, USC. I know you don't want to see it, but I would like to play a Penn State or a Oregon this season. No more Ohio State. I think that would be another bloodbath if they played that game. So go
I
ahead,
started
Eddie.
a conversation about Cade McNamara, who again is just he's not the guy that we thought we were getting. He's been okay and seemingly more comfortable as the season goes on, I guess. He made some good throws today. He had some open guys. I did want to get your take on Lacegate 2024. I pulled this picture from USA Today, and it's like
This
this
is from
the
today?
opposite of this is from today. It's like the opposite of Laces. I also had Heavens send this photo where he's clearly not putting his finger. Now, when I posted this on Twitter, people were like, "Well, he's holding the laces,
Well,
just
his
not with his fingers."
it's like upside down in the picture you're showing right now. Like the laces
It's
are
just
touching the
so-
bottom of his thumb.
It's just so strange.
It is. And Brock Heward, who clearly is not an Iowa Everywhere listener because I don't think he knew about this laces thing, he even mentioned it on one of the throws. He's like, and
Yeah.
look there, he didn't even have to grab the
Wow.
laces. Like, well, he never grabs the laces. He missed some throws again. You say he's been
Yeah, he did.
okay. I thought he was okay today. He was okay in the Minnesota game, but overall he hasn't been okay enough.
He's
for
no,
Iowa.
and he's not the quarterback Iowa needs. If Iowa has an average quarterback, they're a really good team. Because again, the defense doesn't have to be the best defense in the country. If they're making stops, if they're getting timely takeaways, Jamari Harris, by the way, is just awesome. He might be the best player on that defense, even though Higgins has so many tackles. They just don't throw at him, and rightfully so.
Big pick today. Big pick.
Absolutely huge. And so you don't need a great offense. If you have a running back like Caleb Johnson and an offensive line that'll open up some holes for him, if you have a defense that's doing what they've done, if you have a special teams that plays the way Iowa did today, you just need a decent quarterback who's not going to screw everything up by making dumb plays. I guess Cade McNamara is that guy, but God, it's just the year after year thing of, man, if you just had a pretty good quarterback, how much better would you be?
And if he just could have not been absolutely horrible in the second half of that Iowa State game. The play that's going to haunt me is the throwback interception in that Iowa State game. I'm sure there are Cyclone fans watching and listening to us right now that are just so excited their hands are down their pants because we keep bringing it up, and they've got a big game later on tonight that I have them losing, by the way. So far, everything has gone according to how I thought it would go this season with Iowa and Iowa State. I had Iowa bouncing back and winning this game. This is one of those, congratulations to Kirk Ferentz, the 200th win.
Yeah.
Now second all-time in Big Ten coaching wins behind only Woody Hayes, who he's eventually going to pass. I think he's only 5 away or so. But this is one of those, the reason why I picked Iowa in this game, it's one of those culture games that Kirk Ferentz has been so good at winning these last few years. Like when the fan base is on the edge of collapse.
Yeah, backs against the wall.
You've lost to Iowa State. You got blown out again by a ranked team in Ohio State. And now you're coming home in a game that a lot of people thought was a toss-up with a spread at 2.5, 3 points. And he's so good at getting these guys to turn the page and move forward. And once again, he does it. What makes him so good in moments like this?
I think it is the culture, right? And it's such an overused word, but it's that thing you fall back on, and the reason that this program doesn't fall apart. I brought up 2020. You remember how bad that season started? Those first 2 losses,
0-2,
and how bad that offseason was for this program and for Kirk Ferentz personally. And it really, I remember going on the radio, going on podcasts, and saying, "Man, this really feels like it's unraveling quickly." And it didn't. It was the opposite. They won the next 6 games, started 6-0 the following season. Would have probably won 8 games had they been able to play Michigan in that championship week and whoever Missouri was it they were going to play in the bowl game that ended up pulling out because of COVID. It's the thing you fall back on. It's what you hear when you listen to like a washed up walk-ons podcast and you hear those former players or Pat Angerer on the Learfield broadcast. I mean, these players absolutely love Kirk Ferentz. He has built a culture within this program that doesn't just go away with one loss. They can accept these losses and weather those storms, and they come out and they take punches and they redeliver them, right? And so and then I think it helps that you had a packed Kinnick Stadium today. Obviously, a lot of the things, and Kinnick looked great.
Crowd
By the way,
brought
this
it.
is from our friend Scott Docterman. Right before the game. I love the stripes when they do it well. Not everybody can do that, and Iowa does. The crowd did bring it. And so, yeah, I think, again, it's kind of this intangible thing of culture. But I think that's it. You see it in weeks like this where everything could fall apart, and you had 2 players transfer out of the program midweek, and you just got your ass kicked by Ohio State, and you've already lost 2 of your first 5 games. And what do you fall back on? What's the thing that you lean on? And for lesser coaches and lesser programs, you lean back and there's nothing there, and you do fall on your ass. And Iowa just doesn't. And so I think that's a real credit to Kirk Ferentz and the staff that he's kept around him for years and years and decades in some cases.
There's a lot of things you can criticize about Kirk Ferentz, about the program, about this and that, quarterback play, offense, the nepotism stuff that had been going on the last couple of years. But there's one thing you can't question, and that's the culture that the program has and the fact that the players just love playing for Kirk Ferentz. Got a tweet from Nick who brings up a good point. He says that we need to be giving more credit to Barnett and the offensive line. Obviously, Caleb is playing awesome, but the guys up front are road grading this season. Yeah. And he's right. I love putting my eyes about 5 yards ahead of where Caleb Johnson is when he gets the ball to see the holes being blown open. And AD, that's something we hadn't seen for years. Now, he's creating even more with what he can do, breaking tackles and finding open space. But this all starts with the push up front in the offensive line, and they've been great.
Yeah, absolutely, they have, and they've taken a lot of bullets over the last couple of years too. And
They have. They were bad. They were really bad.
They were, and even in the start of this season, and there have been some moments in this season where it's a little questionable. But you're right, for the most part, they are those road graders that we've talked about. I thought the broadcast did a really good job of pointing that out a couple of different times today. And then again, it's part of it is Tim Lester's scheme, which is just so different than from what we saw for so long under Brian Ferentz.
Iowa blows out Washington 40-16. This is Instant Iowa, presented by Fareway Meat Grocery in the Channel Seed Studios. Chris Hassel and Andrew Downs. We buried the lead, AD, because I think one of the biggest stories of this game and one of the lasting memories is going to be what happened in the end zone on a kickoff that went through the end zone, where a dude got slammed right in the face. And we partnered with HUDU, and our Scott Sipker said, hey, let's do a doer of the game. But I don't want it to be like an MVP. I want it to be
not
something
Caleb
different.
Johnson, right.
Think outside the box. Mm-hmm. So for my HUDU doer of the game, I am going to give it to the man who took it and got back up. Joe Glazer from Des Moines. There he is after being hit in the face, gets a big standing ovation. And I also want to give credit to Learfield and the Iowa Hawkeye Radio Network, because Rob Brooks got out there right away and interviewed the guy. One, I think just to make sure he's okay, but mostly because this was going to be some entertainment value. And AD, you have a clip of Brooks interviewing Joe after getting pummeled in the face by Pigskin.
Oh, what the heck happened?
So I seen the kickoff, and the ball was coming real fast, and I knew it was going over the end zone, and I knew it was coming right at me. So I put my hands up, but that ball's going a lot faster than you really think it is. And it went right through my hands, and it hit me in the face.
But you popped right back up.
Yeah, that's what Hawkeyes do. We don't give up, we swarm. Ball's on the ground, we're there to get it. And I was just being a true Hawkeye fan and doing what we all love and being here on Kinnick on Saturday day. So go Hawk!
So you're going to make it.
Oh, yeah, I'm not leaving. I'm going to be here all game cheering. Washington, they drove a long way. Good fans, good program, but it's all about Hawkeyes here in Iowa City. So
you got it, Joe. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Joe.
Hey, Pat, he's after your job, I think.
he's doing a good job. He obviously wasn't a tight end at high school or a wideout. Joe Glazer from Des Moines. Stand up and take a bow.
Stand up, Joe. You're the HUDU doer of the game for me.
That's
I love the
great.
reaction from Angerer.
He's
laughing his ass off
chuckling the whole
booth.
time. That's awesome.
I seen it coming right at me.
And it was because I didn't see it in real time until everybody on Twitter were like, "Oh my God, that guy just got hit in the head." And then the video was all, and yeah, good on Rob Brooks for going out there and doing the reporter work, getting that interview. That was great. The first one I wrote down for the doer of the game, the HUDU doer, was Wyatt Black with that field goal block on that first long Washington possession, because again, those are the winning plays that. Ultimately Iowa won 40-16, so it doesn't feel like, stopping a team from getting 3 points in the first quarter is a huge play.
I was nervous early, the way they were moving that football.
Exactly, and we know how these games go, and to kind of rip the heart out of Washington there and give them nothing after a drive like that, and then to have Iowa go right back and punch it down their throat and have a long drive of their own and score. I thought that was huge. But no, my HUDU doer is the guy who worked the most today, and it's the guy for Fox who is on field when there's a commercial to stop.
They call them red hats.
The red hat. The red hat for Fox today at Kinnick Stadium is my doer of the game, because that guy did more than almost anybody else. The amount of times, and now part of that is because Washington had these crazy long drives. Right, and so the clock is running. They don't have, and so they do the dreaded kickoff or a commercial break after a score, then kickoff, and then commercial break. And it's just the worst. And especially when there are touchback kickoffs. I'm glad that guy got hit in the head, Joe Glazer, so that we actually had something to talk about during one of those commercial breaks. But that's Fox has always been bad about this. When it comes to like the number of commercials, it felt even worse today.
I believe from doing games last year on the radio, I did games that were on ESPN, games that were on ABC, games that were on Fox, and there was a difference. Fox would take, from what I remember, they would take shorter breaks, but more breaks. Where
that feels when you're watching at home, that feels like more commercials, even if it's the same number.
I think it's the same number of ad time, but
Right.
I think they do take more breaks, and the breaks are just like 30 to 45 seconds shorter than some of the other networks.
It's really not noticeable, I think, for a lot of people.
If you want more on HUDU, you want to HUDU pretty much anything that's legal.
It's legal. You can HUDU it.
They've got an app now. Download the HUDU app, or you can visit heyhudu.com. It's HUDU. Home projects, vehicle detailing, hauling, pornography. Oh, no, that says photography. Sorry, I thought that said pornography. No, that's probably one of the few things that you can't get done. As long as it's legal, which I guess pornography is, HUDU it. And for a limited time, and it's very limited now, you can take $50 off your first job. That thing ends, end of the month,
I think
AD?
so. Yeah.
Scott was talking about that
advantage
on
of
Murph
that.
and Andy last week. Absolutely.
Get shit
HUDU, the
done.
odd job marketplace. Iowa got things done today.
Yeah, they
40
did.
to 16 against Washington. Fun game to watch.
It was, and I wrote down a few things before the game that I wanted to see in this game. And you talk about getting shit done for the Hawkeyes. I think all of these things happened. So my first thing was it was the same as last week, although I had more hope that it was actually going to happen this week. I wanted to see the offense have 3 or 4 scoring drives, and again, not short field aided by a turnover. But I want to see this offense move the ball down the field several times on this Washington defense. And I didn't keep track. I didn't keep tally of how many times they did that. But I think
I've got it right here,
satisfied
AD.
that.
They had an 80-yard touchdown drive. They had a 61-yard touchdown drive. They had a 53-yard drive, but it ended in a field goal. They did have some shorter drives, like a 35-yarder for a touchdown,
And that's
a
because
33-yarder
had
for a
that great
touchdown.
punt return. Right.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that 9-play, 80-yard drive on their second drive of the game was really what got them going.
But I think they satisfied that little check mark. I wanted flawless special teams. I wanted no mistakes, and I think they did even better than that, right? I mean, like, it was spectacular special teams. Reese Dakin flipped the field twice in that first quarter, or in the first couple of punts, and that was huge for the Hawkeyes. It really was. I want to see the crowd impact the game, and again, it wasn't maybe quite as pronounced as we've seen in other areas in other times, but those red zone situations for Washington were certainly hampered by the crowd a couple of times. Some false starts, things like that. I thought we saw that, and then just win and get number 200 for Ferentz, and they did that. So they ticked every box that I had set out for them today. And again, I was pretty hopeful they were going to not just win, but look pretty good doing it, and they satisfied all of that.
I was very confident that Iowa was going to win this game because of what we talked about, the culture. This is just something that Kirk Ferentz does. You're returning home. It seemed like it had been forever since Iowa was at Kinnick Stadium with back-to-back road games and a bye week sandwiched in between. And
to have the Big Ten home opener on October 12th feels late.
Yeah, because you had a bye and 2 road games, but now the schedule sets up where you're going to have more home games than not the rest of the way, and it really opens up. I mean, I don't see why if you score 40 in a game like this, you put up 31 on Minnesota. I mean, I think they could put up some big numbers against Michigan State and Northwestern and Maryland and UCLA. I mean, this
get on those overs before Vegas starts bumping them up. If you're getting an Iowa game at like 40 over under, especially with the defense not being as shut down as we've known them, right? If the offense is going to score more and the defense is going to give up more points, jump on those overs while you can.
Anything else you wanted to hit on today,
Yeah, so
AD?
the only other thing was just the craziness at the end of the first half with the field goal stuff.
Jesus.
First of all, how the hell is it 2024 and we don't have better technology? I mean, tennis, soccer, we have this stuff figured out. It is figured out. In American sports, for whatever reason, we've hesitated because it's the same thing in baseball. I mean, these aren't judgment calls. You can figure this out. There is a way to know whether or not a field goal goes through the uprights, and not just the guy looking up, right? Like, we can do this. We can figure this out. And yet we're sitting here debating. And then after review, we've determined it's a non-reviewable play, but we're still going to take the timeout from Iowa. We'll just give them their challenge back. A timeout, which ultimately could have been a big play, because the other thing is Iowa's new Hail Mary, and we saw it a few weeks ago also. Iowa's biggest, most threatening Hail Mary play is a handoff to Caleb Johnson. And as crazy as that sounds, it's the absolute truth, especially with the noodle arm that Cade McNamara is hauling out there. And so for all, it felt like at the time, well, another timeout doesn't matter because I was just going to run the ball into the line of scrimmage and get to halftime. But all of a sudden, Caleb breaks one off. You find yourself in field goal range. I also don't know what the hell the play call was with like 7 seconds left for Iowa, where McNamara literally got the snap, turned, and threw it out of bounds.
I think that, I hope anyway, that Kirk Ferentz said, okay, just take the snap and then throw it out of bounds so we waste 3 seconds and then we'll bring the field goal.
So that they don't get the ball.
But I feel like with Cade,
but again, you should have had a timeout there because...
You should have. I would have just kicked the field goal with 7 seconds. I wouldn't
shouldn't
have
gotten taken away with the unreviewable. But okay, and then Iowa's field goal, Drew Stevens' kick, the kind of ball don't lie field goal that Iowa got before the end of the half to go up by 10, was just as close of a call. And I think it was, maybe even just a makeup call for the Hawkeyes. That guy standing under that goalpost certainly couldn't have called that no good after what he just did on the other side of the field. But Heavens FX on Twitter, who does great like AI stuff, but also just grabs video, he made this little GIF of those two field goals. And it really is incredible how close both of these kicks are. And again, they're right over top of the goalpost, so I guess that makes it a non-reviewable play.
Yeah, that's what they said, that if it goes over the goalpost, it's not reviewable.
Why is there not a laser shooting up to the sky on top of each of these goalposts?
Yeah.
Again, we can figure this out. We can figure this out.
The goalposts in the NFL are higher. They don't have to be as high in college football, but especially with the way the kicking game has evolved over the years.
And Kinsey makes a good point here. Why are there not multiple cameras right on the goal line? These are things that we could have solved years ago, and we're sitting here debating whether or not a kick went through the uprights. We can figure this out. We can do it. I have faith. Somebody do this.
Still old dudes on the sideline hauling around a stick with a chain on it.
Yeah, and they literally just, like, the spotting of the ball is just a guess. It's where the linesman thinks he saw it, right? Like, it's some of the craziest shit that we do as sports fans in a sport that has billions and billions and billions of dollars wrapped up around it in salary, in revenue, in sports gambling, and it's just getting more and more every day. And you're right, we have 68-year-old retired dudes hauling chains up and down the sideline. And again, because it was a 40-16 final for the Hawkeyes, some of this stuff ended up not mattering. But if you lose or win a game by 3 points and you think you got screwed out of a field goal, or you think that they gave the other team a field goal that didn't look like a field goal, those are big, big things. These are big, big decisions being made, and they're just being made by eyeballs. It's fucking crazy.
It really is. Yeah, but you could just put a chip in the ball.
Yeah.
And figure, especially in the NFL. Like,
yes.
I don't know what we're doing with that. I'm sure it will happen eventually.
I've thought the same thing about baseball forever. Like, you could just have a little pad in the glove. You could have a chip in every ball. You could have chips in the, like weighted pads in the bases. Like, we can figure, again, tennis, they know within like 4 seconds if a ball is a millimeter out or inside of a line.
I've seen
they don't even have to go to replay. It just happens. And in football, we got a guy looking up like, oh, I think that probably went through.
I've seen guys. I've seen soccer matches where they have the VAR system for review to review if somebody's offside, and they'll like highlight a section of their body. There was one I saw in like a big game or a match, as they would say in soccer. The tip of his cock made him offside. Because they showed this like silhouette and highlight the part that's offside, like with the line, and it was like the tip of his cock right over the, making him offside.
It's like that pole vaulter in the Olympics. Like, man,
we've got the ability, but then it gives us less things to bitch about. Not a lot to bitch about today. Iowa scores on 7 straight drives.
Amazing.
Cade doesn't turn the ball over. Caleb goes for 3 touchdowns. That's now a couple of different games where he's had 3 touchdowns. And Iowa.
That's one other thing I wanted to touch on. What would this dude look like in the Mountain West? And nothing against the Boise State running back, but man,
Genty is the Heisman favorite going into the weekend. A lot of the
Heisman talk died down after last week, and rightfully so, when Caleb didn't go for more than 100 against Ohio State. But man, if he is getting 175 yards and 2 touchdowns a game in a Big Ten season, it's going to be really, really hard to ignore. And at this point, there's no reason to think that that's not possible.
Here's what Genty did, though, against Oregon.
Yeah.
192 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. So that's what Genty's going to be able to fall back on. I'm not saying
Genty isn't great, okay? Again, I hate that I have to fucking preface everything I say with like all of the nuance. I'm just saying I would like to see Caleb Johnson line up against Mountain West teams every week and see what he does.
Well, it was fun to see what he did against that Washington defense today, a defense that on paper anyway looked pretty good, but I think it was because they played some teams with weak offenses.
Welcome to the Big Ten, Washington.
Yeah, that was the welcome moment. I don't think Washington is going to end up being some ranked team at the end of the year. I do think that they're one of the better teams on Iowa's Big Ten schedule, though, and it was a really nice win for the Hawkeyes.
And they go to Indiana next week, so that'll be fun. Or I guess a couple weeks. I think they have a bye now. But
you give up 40 to Iowa. What are you giving up to Indiana?
Then the rest of their schedule for Washington, they're at Indy. They have a bye next week. Then at Indiana, home against USC, who's beating Penn State right now. Then at Penn State. Then UCLA at home and at Oregon to finish things out. So Washington's about to lose 4 of their next 5.
Yeah, they are not the team they were a season ago, and I think a lot of people read too much into the Michigan win because Michigan is not the team they were a year ago, not even close. All right, AD, that was fun. It's always a lot more fun after a win than a loss.
Yes, it is.
You could pretty much sit back and relax for the entire last 20 minutes or so of game time in this one as Iowa put it away in the third quarter and wins it 40-16. AD, thanks. We'll see you on Murph and Andy on Monday.
See you on Two Guys Monday morning.
Sounds good. Thanks for watching, listening. Download and follow wherever you find us. Give us a review. Really appreciate you guys jumping aboard for Instant Iowa as we go live as soon as every Hawkeye game ends this fall. And this one proverbially ended in the third quarter as Iowa eventually runs away with it 40-16.